Yellowstone National Park is famous for its geysers, hot springs, and most of all, the supervolcano lurking beneath it. It's so big that when it erupts, we won't just be saying, "Holy smokes, it's going to be a rough commute this morning." It will be a rough commute for the rest of human history. But what keeps the park steaming? What makes the magma lumpy below? And how do we know so much about an eruption that hasn't happened yet? We sent our crack team of scientists into the field to find out. They brought back some answers, and a rock. This is the Yellowstone Scoop. For those who don't live and breathe volcanoes, here's a quick refresher. Beneath the park lies a magma chamber connected to a gigantic underground reservoir of molten rock called the mantle plume. The plume pumps heat up through the overriding plate of the Earth's crust. Now, the word pump makes this sound like a conscious decision by some subterranean heart. But this process is more like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Heat and pressure hundreds of kilometers below the surface cause the rock in the mantle to behave like a very thick liquid, pushing its way upward bit by bit. Eventually, the pressure is great enough to force magma through weak spots in the crust, which is kind of like when your mom lets out a big sigh and tells you to take out the trash. And just like your mom, the Earth's crust doesn't always listen right away. Sometimes the magma has nowhere to go and builds up pressure until it blows, sending ash and lava spewing out in a volcanic eruption. Over the last 2 million years, the Yellowstone plume has produced several super eruptions, with each blast flattening the surrounding land and blanketing North America in ash. But these eruptions are separated by periods of relative calm when the magma chamber refills slowly but steadily. The reason we know all this is because we've been studying the heck out of it. Scientists have collected thousands of data points on the plumbing system below Yellowstone, including the composition and depth of the magma chamber, the frequency of earthquakes, changes in the landscape over time, and even details about past eruptions. Some of this info comes from monitoring equipment that's currently in use, such as the seismic sensors that detect earthquakes and GPS stations that measure ground movements as small as a few millimeters. Other data was collected during the last major project to study Yellowstone Supervolcano, the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory's 2012-14 field campaign. This was an ambitious undertaking involving more than 3 dozen scientists from universities and government labs across the country. They slept in tents while they collected rock samples, installed monitoring equipment, and conducted experiments in the park. And now their research has provided new insights into the mysterious plumbing system below Yellowstone. Their findings were published recently in the journal Frontiers in Earth Science. One of the papers presented a model of the magma chamber based on the chemical composition of the magma that makes it up. When researchers analyzed samples of magma that had come to the surface in recent eruptions, they found 2 distinct types. One was silica-rich, and the other was silica-poor. This is similar to magma found at other volcanoes, but unusual for supervolcanoes. Most supervolcanoes erupt a single type of magma, which scientists call homogeneous. Homogeneous magmas form in big chambers that churn and mix constantly. That mixing brings deep material up to the surface and shallow material down below, so the whole chamber has a uniform composition. But at Yellowstone, the different magma types don't mix. Instead, they coexist in separate pockets within the magma chamber. This means that the magma chamber might actually be made up of multiple smaller chambers, either stacked vertically or side by side. These could feed different vents and create the wide variety of landforms we see today. Or they could be the result of a more complicated plumbing system with multiple pathways connecting the magma chamber to the mantle plume. That idea is supported by a second paper, which used computer models to simulate the movement of magma below Yellowstone. By tweaking the model's parameters, the team was able to reproduce some of the features of the real Yellowstone plumbing system, like the 2 types of magma and the nearly circular shape of the caldera. But it turns out that this can only be explained if there are multiple pathways from the mantle plume to the surface. And that suggests that the magma chamber is much more complicated than we thought. But perhaps even cooler is the fact that this research helps explain why Yellowstone has been quiet for the past 640 years. In the past, Scientists had proposed a few different ideas for why the magma chamber isn't overflowing. Maybe the conduit through which magma reaches the surface is clogged. Maybe the mantle plume is taking a break. Or maybe the magma chamber is being constantly emptied by smaller eruptions that we didn't know about. But this new research suggests that none of those things are happening. Instead, the magma just isn't rising fast enough to fill the chamber. The researchers ran computer simulations to figure out why. And it turns out that the answer depends on how deep the magma chamber is. If it's deep, then the magma chamber is probably being fed by multiple pathways, all of which are pretty narrow. This slows the ascent of the magma, allowing dissolved gases to bubble out and solidify the magma before it reaches the surface. If the magma chamber is shallower, then there's probably just one main pathway from the mantle plume. But because it's so narrow, the magma backs up and forms a sort of plug that blocks the flow of fresh magma. This creates an impermeable barrier that prevents the magma chamber from filling up. Either way, the result is the same: no eruption. Now, if this sounds like good news, remember that the magma chamber needs to fill up eventually, and when it does, we're gonna have problems. Knowing how the magma chamber works will help scientists predict how high the magma level will get before the next eruption and how explosive that eruption will be. Right now, the Yellowstone Supervolcano is at about the same level of unrest we see before eruptions, so there's no need to panic, pack up and move to Canada. But if we keep monitoring the situation, we should be able to tell if things are getting more serious. In the meantime, we can take comfort in knowing that scientists are working hard to learn everything they can about the supervolcano. One of them even went so far as to bring home a souvenir rock. This is a piece of pumice the size of a softball that was blasted out of the volcano during its most recent eruption. Pumice is a lightweight volcanic rock that's full of holes left over from gas bubbles, and it's one of the few parts of the magma that makes it all the way to the surface without solidifying. So it can provide clues about the magma's composition and how fast it was moving when it erupted. Plus, it's just plain cool to think that this rock was spewed out of a volcano in 1885, and now it's sitting on a desk in a lab. Our crack team of scientists might not have found the heart of the Yellowstone Supervolcano, but they did bring home a piece of it. And that's something to really sink your teeth into. Yellowstone National Park is home to the world's most famous supervolcano, but it's also home to grizzly bears, bison, and wolves. To keep visitors safe, the park has strict rules about how close you can get to wildlife. But with all the hiking trails, campgrounds, and geysers to see, it's easy to get turned around and wind up where you're not supposed to be. And if you run into a bison, you definitely don't want to be unprepared. When it comes to wild animals, you can never be too careful. Thanks for watching this episode of SCI Show. If you would like to help support this channel, we have a platform where you can support us directly and get cool perks like submitting a question to our inbox. You can submit your questions right here, and our editors will pick out the best ones to answer in episodes like this one. If you don't want to wait, you can also check out our podcast where we answer listener questions